Hi, everyone. I think we're live. So I will go ahead and get us started. My name is Shala Naimi. It's good to meet everyone. I'm joining from the Google Human Rights team, which sits within government affairs and public policy, and is really focused on helping us, uphold all of our public commitments to human rights, including to the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, as well as to the Global Network Initiative principles. And so, with that, I it looks like our slides are up, so I'm going to actually just pass it over to Tin, who I see, to introduce herself as well.
Hi, my name is Tana Costa, and I'm a product manager at Jigsaw, which is a unit at Google that focuses on using technology to make people safer online.
Hi,
I'll pass it off to
everyone.
Grace.
I'm Grace. I lead partnerships for our privacy, safety, and security organization focused on protecting those at highest risk of targeted attacks.
Amazing. Thank you. And as the organizers mentioned, really what we wanted to do today was to share, a handful of tools that we have. And actually, I'm just trying to figure out how to change the slides. There you go. A handful of tools that we have to help everybody stay safe online. And I think this is particularly relevant for all of you. And so before we jump into that, wanted to just set the stage for a few minutes and share a little bit of information about why this is important. I think that all of you joining here today probably already have a really good sense of that from just your personal experience, but we thought it would be helpful to spend, 2 or 3 minutes on this subject. And so, just kind of at a very high level, the reason this is really important is that account security continues to be a really growing area of concern and really necessitates action from both institutions, but also from individuals. And so I think this is particularly important for individuals who are vulnerable and are doing work around human rights, including civil society organizations, academics, journalists, human rights defenders, and others. And so we've seen a rise in cyber attacks targeting these individuals in particular. And so really wanted to take a moment and sort of reflect on some tools. Just to give all of you a little bit of an example, Amnesty International came out with a report, I think somewhat recently in the last couple of years, about a wave of coordinated phishing attacks targeting human rights activists across MENA. And so I think, you might think that phishing isn't an issue for a lot of people, but we have found that the numbers indicate otherwise. Specifically, sophisticated phishing sites trick almost half of users, and hackers are really fast. Once they've obtained login information, they will often attempt to access your account within 30 minutes. And so the period of time between the hacking and the action is quite limited to action upon it. We also see that a lot of these attacks start, or at the very least include phishing. And so information security continues to be an area of really deep concern across MENA. Just to give you a visual example of how challenging it can be to identify a phishing account, a phishing attempt. Here's just sort of an example of like a real login window with a Google account and a fake login window. These two pages ask for a verification code after entering a password, and that is sent to the user's phone. On the one side, you see the real login, which looks extraordinarily similar to the fake side. And so in this case, an attacker would be able to have both the username, password, and a one-time code that would enable them to access someone's account. And so with a number of tools that we'll share, that Grace and Tin will share later, we have ways to sort of mitigate against these specific types of attacks. The other thing I'll just sort of flag here is that we also see that authoritarian groups are really on a campaign to divide the open internet into a patchwork of repressive enclaves, and so these are excerpts from last year's Freedom House report, Freedom on the Net. And the two things to really mention here is one, global internet freedom continues to decline. We're seeing this across all countries, including countries in MENA. The second is that a lot of governments are really breaking apart the global internet to create more controllable online spaces. And often that tends to target and undermine the rights to free expression and access to information. And so, again, we just wanted to very briefly share some information about why we think that this continues to be, and sort of account security and online safety continues to be a very vulnerable area and one of continuing importance. So shifting to that, we wanted to spend some time just sharing some of the tools that we have, and then hopefully we'll have quite a bit of time for discussion as well. So, all of this is to say that staying safe online, especially if you're a human rights activist, especially if you're an academic or a journalist, is particularly important. And so we wanted to start with sharing just a handful of kind of high level tips that may be relevant for different accounts that you have using Google tools and services. The first is, if you have a YouTube channel or video. I think not everybody knows this, but you're able to have a variety of different kind of public nature of your videos. You're able to unlist your videos from search. You're able to make videos completely private, or you're able to make those videos public. And so you can find this information online, but for those who want to have a mix of public and private presence using YouTube as a platform, you're able to make those changes yourself. The second is that, we recognize that sometimes individuals might want to find a way to remove content about you, about yourself on Google search. So in very limited cases, we will potentially remove links to information from Google search, in particular content that could cause significant risk of identity theft, financial fraud, or other specific harms, such as non-consensual explicit imagery, involuntary fake pornography, or content that could lead to doxing or other sensitive personal identifiable information. And so again, we can, if you sort of look up this particular term, you're able to find ways to submit content to be reviewed for removal from Google search. A few more sort of high-level tips, just to make sure that everybody has them, because I think that, even myself, I'm guilty of not always doing these things, but I think it's a really important kind of online security hygiene, so to speak. One is just keeping your software up to date. Make sure that you're always running the latest version of software on all of your devices. Some Google software like Chrome, Android, will automatically update. So you don't need to worry about doing it yourself. But for other services, you'll get notifications when it's time to update. And I am personally guilty of, pressing remind me later. And it's not a good practice. I think it's really important to install those updates as soon as possible. The second is that if you lose your phone or it's taken away, for whatever reason, if you are separated from your phone, for instance, if you're incarcerated or experiencing detention, you're able to lock it down. And so if your phone is ever lost or stolen, you can visit your Google account, or a trusted source can visit your Google account and select Find Your Phone to protect your data in a few quick steps so that you're able to lock it in and protect any personal information you have on your phones. The other thing we want to mention is that, obviously when you're using Google products and services, you're using highly secure products and services. And one of the things that we do tend to do within Google is, for example, in Gmail, is have a series of what we call soft warnings, which is that if an email, for instance, looks suspicious, i.e. a phishing email, we will often have this type of warning that pops up. And we find that some people don't take those warnings seriously. We do highly suggest that you, pay attention to the warnings and at the very least sort of review it with a level of skepticism, a higher level of skepticism. As I mentioned, when you're using sort of Google products and services, there are quite a lot of automatic built-in protections. And so in Gmail, there's a tremendous amount of automatic spam and phishing protections that exist, and most of the time, 99% of the time, that spam or that malware is completely blocked, or there is a significant warning, and so you will sort of most likely never see the spam that hits your inbox. Another is safe browsing. So safe browsing technology automatically protects quite a lot of devices by alerting users when they're trying to visit risky websites that aren't necessarily protective and that might lead to sort of hacking or account security issues. And that also applies to sort of Google Play Protect, which scans installed apps to again look for malware and keep your devices safe. You're not downloading Google apps that could lead to sort of any potential issues. If you're curious to just get a sense of how your overall security health is, one easy way to protect your Google account is to take the security checkup, which you can do at this link. This is actually a step-by-step tool that gives you personalized and actionable security recommendations based on your specific account. So we have millions of users visited every single day, and over 20% resolve issues that we bring to their attention. So while we automatically protect your privacy with industry-leading security, there are a few additional steps that you can take to be safer, and one way to identify those steps really easily is through the security checkup. Another is, as just a good practice, is to use a password manager if you're not using it already. This really will help you create sort of strong, unique passwords for every single one of your accounts to protect your overall privacy. I think if anybody is using the same password across multiple sites or has been using essentially the same password for a few years even, I think it's really worth the effort to take a couple hours and sort of have a different approach to passwords, because this is oops, I forgot to change the slide. This is something that you don't want to resolve the situation after the issue exists. Just a couple more sort of things to flag here. One is to turn on two-step verification. This really helps you ensure that if there is an account security breach, that it's stopped as soon as possible and doesn't get further. It doesn't actually end up accessing your account. And so if you go to this link, you'll be able to see that pretty easily and to sign up for two-step verification using sort of an alternative method. Again, please use strong passwords. There's a lot of resources around it, and it is one of the easiest, most important things anyone can do. With that, I'm going to just turn it over to Tin, who's going to talk about some of the other kind of specific tools we've built specifically to help human rights defenders and activists stay safe online. So, Tin, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk to you about three tools that we provide for free to the ecosystem to mitigate abuse and allow access to the internet online. So Perspective API, which was briefly on screen earlier. Should I take over? Oh, there, perfect. Perspective API is a suite of machine learning models that identify comments that are toxic. And it's important to be able to flag and moderate toxic comments, because often abuse is used as a means to silence voices or otherwise derail productive conversations. So Perspective is commonly used by platforms to moderate content online. It is able to, tell platforms, the likelihood that a comment is not only toxic, but also an insult or an identity attack or a threat. Over 850 partners call Perspective almost 2 billion times a day, including Reddit, New York Times, El País. Perspective is available in 18 languages, including Arabic, which we developed in conjunction with Al Jazeera. On the next slide, I'll talk about a way that we've used Perspective in order to support individual users. We've used Perspective to help at-risk users like journalists and activists manage harassment on social media. So one, we did pretty deep user research with journalists and activists, and from that understood that one of the most challenging pieces in a moment of harassment is actually documenting that harassment and blocking and muting all the perpetrators of that harassment, especially when that harassment is a large-scale coordinated campaign. So we launched an open source tool called Harassment Manager that uses perspective to identify comments that are included in an episode of harassment and allow users to, within the same experience, document that harassment, block all the perpetrators involved. And we have collaborated with Thomson Reuters Foundation and Code for Africa to actually spin up instances of Harassment Manager and make them available to users. So Thomson Reuters released TR Filter, which has been used by over 4,000 journalists across the world. And Code for Africa has been working to stand this up for African female political candidates and journalists. In the last slide, I'll talk shifting from online abuse to ensuring that there is access to the internet. Outline is a free and open source tool that lets anyone create and share their own virtual private network. So there are a lot of clients that allow you to access VPNs. In the event that those clients are blocked, Outline is sort of your insurance. When VPNs are blocked, but before the internet is fully shut down, Outline allows you to host your own VPN server. And so we do that via two products, Outline Manager, which is the service that lets you spin up your own VPN and share access. And then Outline Client is the app that allows you to connect to someone's Outline VPN, including your own. And recently, we really worked to deploy Outline in Iran during the internet blackouts during the revolution, and that was seen as I'm not able to share specific numbers, but we really did see an enormous access to Outline and demonstrated that it really was helpful in making sure that people were connected to the internet during an otherwise very repressive and very limited time. So thank you for having me. I'll now pass it on to Grace to talk about our advanced protection program.
Thank you, everyone, for having us. You heard a little bit from Shala about kind of why we are so focused on account security in particular. Over 90% of all cyber attacks do start with an account hijacking. So with that in mind, we do have built-in protections, but I wanted to spend some time sharing with folks a little bit more about our strongest form of account security. We have a team at Google specifically dedicated to focusing on solving this for those at highest risk of targeted attacks. I wanted to make sure everyone is aware of the Advanced Protection Program if you're interested in enrolling, and you can hear a little bit more about the protections it offers. Next slide, please. So I'll just dive in now. There are three main protections that the Advanced Protection Program offers. The first is that unphishable technology. It does require security keys. There's no kind of catch-all solve in online safety and cybersecurity, but one of the best and strongest recommendations we do have is to consider using security keys. So that is required for the Advanced Protection Program. The second benefit that it offers is enhanced kind of protections against third-party app access. So, of course, when you use an app on the Google Play Store, for example, it does have security requirements to be on the Google Play Store. If you do opt into the Advanced Protection Program, there are actually stricter requirements on sharing your data. An example I use is instead of, with a third-party app giving access to all of your photos or all of your Google Drive, this program actually prevents that, because we think that those at higher risk should have a little bit of tighter controls around what they share externally. And then lastly, this program helps prevent against things like malware. So there is additional scanning and protections to block malicious downloads. This won't be something that you won't have a delay if you download a PDF, but there are additional scanning layers applied there. And if we could go to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah, so one ahead again. So I know you heard a little bit about security checkup, password manager. I thought it would be helpful to just kind of lay out this is the suite of Safer with Google tools available to you. These are all free. So the security checkup, which you heard about, password manager, which is built in, two-step verification, and advanced protection. Just to pause on two-step verification, I think as we discussed with security keys, I think it's important for folks to make sure that not just for their Google account, but for any account they're logging into, to take that time to make sure you have a second layer of verifying that you are who you say you are. So that's just something to look out for on both our tools and wherever else you go online. Next slide, please. I also want to take this moment to share our enhanced protection program. So this is for those who aren't able to get security keys. We recognize that it's not necessarily feasible for everyone. We have started a pilot program and we want to hear from you and we want your feedback. This is a way to signal to Google that you consider yourself at higher risk of attacks and receive some stronger protections. It's not as strong as the advanced protection program. However, if it's not feasible for you to enroll in advanced protection, as I mentioned, maybe the keys don't make sense. This is something we are really interested in having folks adopt. We do have the form translated in some languages. We are working on translating it into more languages, but we would love for you to adopt this and spread the word and share this with folks. If you don't think it makes sense for them to be an APP, this is still a great signal to send us. And we're super open to feedback as well. If you think this is something that's important to keep doing or helpful for you, or if you have questions, please let us know. Next slide, please. And then lastly, I wanted to share Project Shield. So this is an amazing product that protects against defense denial of service attacks. So this is actually started by Jigsaw Tin's team, and it allows for folks who are worried at an organizational level about DDoS attacks. You can actually sign up for this and get those free protections from Google. The attacks will be routed to Google's servers. So this is a really, really significant free program that is available to you. So please do go to the Shield site and sign up for that if you think this could help your organization. Right? I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. With that, actually, we were hoping to spend just about half the time sharing some of these tools and then to answer any questions you have. So I see that there's a comments section. So we'll give it a few minutes. So if there are any questions or comments, we can go ahead and take those there. In the meantime, I'll just sort of flag while we're waiting for some comments how how important it is to be proactive about this. I think if somebody, a lot of these tools are, the ones that we shared today, they're free, they're publicly accessible. And so being able to go and access them now when you are not in sort of a vulnerable position is really critical because, nobody wants to wait until your account is hacked or you're, vulnerable to, a particular sort of human rights issue when you're accessing these things for the first time. And so if you do have, 30 minutes in the next couple of weeks, highly suggest even taking a few of these different resources. And if you do use Google services to lean on some of them. Oh, I see there's also a Q&A section. So I actually don't see a Q&A section, but maybe I'm missing it. Tin, or here, I'll stop presenting for the moment. So Carol, maybe you can point us to the Q&A section, but until we jump into the Q&A, I see that Esther has a question. Can we find these tools in an overview list somewhere? They're in a few different places. One of the things that we can do is our team can send a follow-up note to Amle, and with a list of all of these and the links, so that they're able to distribute it to anybody who registered or joined for this session. And so I will say that there is the Safer with Google site, which has quite a few of these resources, as well as the Jigsaw site. And so if you go to those two, you'll get all of them. But what we can do, if it's helpful, is to just create a one-page document that lists all of these, so you're able to access them whenever is useful to you. And then Tin and Grace, I think we have a question for both of you regarding Outline.
Yeah, so the question is, when is it better to use Outline Manager and Outline Client instead of a normal VPN service such as AirVPN? So we really consider Outline to be the VPN service of last resort. And so the way that Outline works is that you're spinning up your own VPN server. Whereas the way services like AirVPN work is they've already spun up a VPN for you and you're just able to join it. And in most cases, that is the appropriate way to use a VPN. However, there are cases during internet shutdowns when access to services like AirVPN is blocked. And it is in those cases where you should use Outline, because you're spinning it up on your own. It's something that is not, you're spinning it up brand new from whole cloth. So it's not being blocked. It's your own service, so to speak. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Again, we really think of it as VPN of last resort. Normally, using a normal VPN service should be totally fine and is what we advise. But in the event that those services become inaccessible, you should feel like you can use Outline. Yes, that's one example of where we've seen it quite heavily used. Shala, you're muted.
Thank you. A rookie mistake. We also have a question around whether we have sort of a special platform for human rights defenders, human rights activists, or journalists who need extra safety measures. So I think it's a good question, and some of these resources like Project Shield are they're at the organizational level, and so there's like a fairly simple application that is put in place that asks, are you, for example, a human rights organization? Because those are the individuals that those are the institutions, the groups that these tools were specifically designed for. And so in some cases, in those types of cases, we do have kind of special resources. We don't have a special platform. I think, our approach is really that there are vulnerable communities, journalists, human rights organizations. Sometimes just being a woman can be in itself sort of put you in a vulnerable position. Certainly if you're a female politician, in some cases, you are often kind of subject to specific targeting, harassment online sometimes, et cetera. And so the way that we tend to think about it is sort of twofold. One is, what are the kind of really strong security measures we can put in place for all of our services and accounts, right? When you're using Gmail as an example, you are benefiting from all Google security resources around Gmail, and that includes stopping most spam. That includes, checking for a malware, et cetera. And so that, it is important for us that all of our users are safe online. And so we design and deploy very high levels of security just for all accounts across Google. And then there's sort of to your point, there's a group of people who need extra safety measures. And for those groups, what our approach is and what our focus is, what are the different tools that we can create to support them in whatever ways that they want. And sometimes they are tweaks, like what I shared at the very beginning, which is just knowing that you can control who has access to your Google documents, or you can unlist a YouTube channel so it does not show up in search, so that whatever information I'm putting out there, I'm able to still put it out there and create it, but then only have it be accessible when I choose to share the link rather than being more publicly accessible. But then there are also specific tools like the ones that Tin shared and Grace shared, like advanced and enhanced protection. And those are really kind of like top tier levels of account security for people who can opt in if they want that level of security or if they need that level of security. One other tool that I'm going to share, which we didn't talk about in great detail here, is called Harassment Manager. And so, we know that a lot of human rights defenders and journalists are particularly vulnerable to online harassment. Um, and while a lot of this is prohibited, i.e., doxing or the sharing of sensitive personal information, or violent comments, hateful comments on someone's, let's say, YouTube post, there is occasionally a reason that individuals who might be experiencing this need to be able to document that this has happened. Maybe they need to report it to authorities. Maybe they want to make a public case that says, hey, I've been, the subject of harassment. Here's proof that I have been the subject of harassment, and need the ability to sort of gather it all in one place. But we don't want to put individuals who are experiencing this in the position where they have to go and search for every single link or take screenshots, or go into a situation where they are, it's both manual and they might be essentially re-traumatizing themselves through this process. And so the Jigsaw team, and Tin, feel free to please jump in here with more information, has created this sort of open tool where individuals can sort of gather and document this information for the sake of preservation or for other cases. And so those are sort of the ways that we think about it is, what are the specific tools that we can offer to people to opt in? And that's what we're hoping to sort of share here today. But then what are all of the really sort of critical automated security elements that we put in place for just any account globally, regardless of whether they are a human rights defender or a journalist or a particular target. Tin, feel free to unmute if you had anything else to add there as well, or Grace as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on Harassment Manager. Probably the easiest way to get access to it now is to reach out to the Thomson Reuters Foundation. So their website is trfilter.org. Otherwise, if you are with an organization that has technical capabilities, Harassment Manager is an open source code base, so you can spin up an instance of Harassment Manager and offer that to your organization. And if there are any questions about that, jigsaw.com/harassment-manager. And to Shala's point, we'll send out a list with all these links. You can reach out to us for help with that or for potential partnership opportunities to make sure that we can offer those to your community.
Amazing. We have another question here. Are there any Chrome extensions that are Google created or recommended to stay safe online, especially on social media? This is a great question that I actually don't have the answer to, but Grace, Tin, you might have some more information here.
The first thing that comes to mind is actually using the built-in password manager, but I know that probably doesn't fully answer the social media part of that question. But I would say I don't know that everyone knows that the password manager is built into Chrome. I would encourage folks to use that and use it for any site they log into, any social media sites or otherwise.
And maybe while we wait for any additional questions, I will just reiterate that I think having a robust password is an extraordinarily easy, important safety measure that anybody can do, and I think it's one that a lot of us undervalue. A lot of us are using a variation or the same password that we've been using for 10 years, and that is extremely vulnerable. The other thing I'll mention is that we recently announced that we'll be over the beginning December of this year, but then over the course of a period of time, we'll be deleting inactive accounts. And so this is going to take a long time because there are literally billions of inactive accounts that exist, but these are accounts that maybe somebody created and then never even logged into or used after that first creation, or they have not logged in or used it in any way for 2 years. And so these types of accounts are really strong vectors for account security issues and spam and other sort of kind of malicious actions. And so, really as a matter of one, security, but then two, also, it's a lot of kind of personal data that we're as a company holding onto that, we don't necessarily need to because the accounts are inactive. So as a matter of privacy as well, we will be deleting those accounts. So that's just a little bit of a flag that I want to mention, because if you do have accounts that you haven't used in years, we do highly recommend that if you want to keep them, to go ahead and just log in or use it in some capacity over the next few months, because for security issues and other sort of reasons, we will be starting to delete those accounts. Amazing. I'm going to give it just one more minute in case other questions come in. Otherwise, I know some people might be hopefully in the almost having dinner, or having dinner at this particular moment, and so we can potentially even give people a little bit of time back to have a little food. But I'll give it another minute in case another question or two comes in. Amazing. And Malik is sharing some really good kind of comments in the chat around the participants list, which, of course, you can reach out to any of us about things that we've shared. And, we will follow up with Amle to share with them sort of a list of all of these links and things that we've shared here today, so that you're able to, on your own time, kind of explore them and stay safer online. Amazing. Well, I think with that, I think that was the notice that we can give you all a little bit of time back. Thank you all so much for having us and for all the work that you are doing, really defending the rights of so many people. We really appreciate it. And this was the first time that we were participating in the forum, and it was really, I think, an honor and pleasure for us. And we're really looking forward to and appreciate Emily putting this together and enabling us to participate. So hopefully this is the first of many conversations. So thank you again, and have a good rest of your evenings.